Hi, Kenny.
Hi, Mira.
So the changes that I made yesterday, those are you're showing the screen basically with those changes. So the index file that we originally had on the main branch, I just added one function called get tweets from tweet array. So basically, this array is what I'm going to get from Puppeteer after
Okay,
scraping.
so just to interrupt you there. So
Mm-hmm.
this is what happened while I was making all the refactoring changes in the separate branch, right? So I made some changes in the Twitter module, and in between you have like refactored some of the code, and you have added some extra code so that we can uh, perform API calls from Puppeteer. Is that right?
Yes. So now we are just trying to figure out how to put the old code in the new branch.
Okay.
The code in
Okay.
the
Great.
old format, in the old Twitter folder.
Mm,
Some changes that I made for the Puppeteer integration. We are trying
mm.
to see how it can fit into the new module that you have refactored.
Okay, got it. And this change specifically, what? How does this change help the project?
This change is supposed to help us to get the tweets with a single API call, which we get from the Puppeteer. So Puppeteer is going to return us a bunch of tweet IDs for the older
Okay.
tweets.
Mm.
So I'm using the API to get all the additional information about those tweets rather than scraping everything from the page.
Okay, so instead of using Puppeteer to scrape the content of the tweets, we are fetching the tweet IDs and then making API requests to get the actual data.
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, you can walk me through the code. Yeah.
Yeah. So just like how we had a tweet lookup and now we have something called get tweets from tweet array. This is just going to give me the Puppeteer integration is going to give me a bunch of tweet IDs. So I'm
Okay.
doing a similar do tweet lookup, but this time I've written a separate file because I wanted it to be in separate logics. I didn't want it to mix. So again,
Okay.
I've written a separate file called tweets array lookup. Previously, it was just
Super.
tweet lookup. Now it's tweets
Okay.
array lookup .js. So it's pretty much doing the same thing what the previous lookup was doing, except the function it's just going to join all the tweets in the tweet array with a comma and make a single API
Okay.
call.
Okay. So the URL will have multiple tweets separated by comma.
Yeah, but otherwise the
Okay.
endpoint and everything is going to remain the same. Instead of one tweet
Okay.
ID, I'm appending all the elements in the array with a comma and putting it in the endpoint.
Okay. Okay. Got it. So this is the same as the tweet endpoint and not the search endpoint.
Yeah, this is the same as the lookup endpoint, not the search endpoint.
Okay. Got it.
See, the difference between the Puppeteer approach and our regular approach is with the Puppeteer approach, we already have the tweets on the conversation. So we don't need the conversation ID anymore. So
Okay. Since
Puppeteer
we
has
have all
already
the tweet ID.
scraped. Yeah, Puppeteer has already scraped the tweets on the thread.
Okay. Okay. Got it.
So we don't need to make a hit to the search endpoint. And this is the way we are circumventing the limitation of the search API.
Okay.
Because the
Got it.
search API was giving us all the trouble with that 7-day-old restriction. Lookup endpoint never had any issues. So as long as you have the ID, it's going to give you the tweet details. So this is
Okay.
why we are doing the integration approach. Puppeteer and Twitter API, we are integrating in this way. We are trying to avoid the search endpoint.
Okay. Got it. Yeah.
Okay. So there is a problem here, however, which I haven't coded. I don't know how to handle it because tweet IDs, this API endpoint has a limitation of only up to 100 tweets. You
Okay.
cannot do this approach for more than 100. So for now, I didn't care about that because let's see if this works. That was my, so I haven't checked that restriction yet, but we
Okay.
can do it down the road. We have not seen such long threads anyway. So we will have to tackle it down the road.
Okay.
Okay, so it's pretty much the same thing, same approach that I did previously. So I'm making a fetch call and then I'm processing the response.
Okay.
So in the process response, again, I'm checking if the request is successful, or I will just go ahead and get the JSON out of the response.
Okay.
And then I'm calling a process tweet array response this time, which is in a separate file again. In the response process, I get the first tweet based on the conversation ID. So I'm filtering out in the set of tweets that Twitter is going to respond me back. For the first tweet, its ID and the conversation ID will match. So that is how I'm picking out the first tweet of the thread. Okay, so I'm doing that, and then I'm picking the user. Similarly, because remember now the tweet IDs that they are going to scrape out might have replies as well. So we shouldn't, worry about all of them. So for that reason, I'm doing these two filters. So here, the first tweet I'm picking because the first tweet's ID and the conversation ID will match. So that is how I'm picking out the first tweet. And the user object, because the replies might have several other users also. So we only care about the user who has started the thread, right? So for that reason, I'm filtering it out on the basis of the user ID and the first tweet's author ID. Those two should match.
So here you are discarding all the tweets by other users.
Yes.
And only including the ID which is matching for our first tweet author ID.
Yes.
Okay, so we get the final filtered list of tweets in the user object here.
Yeah. So now we have the user object, which we are going to use for creating the cover page. That the first, the one on top that we generally display. So to extract that information, I'm picking the user object this way, and we also get the first ID by matching the ID and the conversation ID.
Okay. So we are taking the 0 to get the first tweet.
Yeah. Generally, this filter returns an array, right? So.
Okay.
Filter function will generally return an array. That's what I assumed. So I'm putting a 0 there.
Yeah, usually this map or for each or filters
will return an array. So
yeah, it will manipulate the existing array. So here users would be an array. And then
yeah.
on this array, you are performing the operation.
Yes. So then the tweet. So basically now we have the first tweet. Now we have to map it to our format. So for that, Puru wrote this render rich tweets. So basically I'm just mapping that. Does that make sense? So that is this line. This was already there. Yeah, this was already there. So I just used that.
Okay, this does something. Using the I really don't know what it does,
but he's filtering out the entities. So the Twitter response will have a bunch of annotations, entities, some other context to basically store the media files or the URLs if there is any. So he's doing some processing there. See, this is why I said he has also made some changes. So I'm not sure how to put them anyway. So this is a process that he wrote. Basically just maps the Twitter response to a specific format in our end. So this process is doing something.
Okay.
Anyway, so add common is the process that I already wrote, which will just basically extract the common details and push it to the global variable that we originally have. And add tweet does basically just adds the first tweet that we have already extracted. We push it to that block. Okay, so this process was what I was doing in the original lookup. Then after doing this, I will call the search endpoint, but now we don't have to make the second API call at all because we already have all the response. So now without making the second API call, I'm doing pretty much what I did for the search response.
Okay.
Okay, this is the same logic that we had for the search, except now we are not making the hit to the endpoint.
We have all the data
already. Yeah.
This is okay. All of this just processes it and we are adding it in between. Okay.
Yeah. So it's just one single file now. We are not making the second API hit now anymore. So this is the only change that I made. And I think I also made one change in the index.js, which is the original index.js to point to this file. I don't know where that was.
This one, right?
Not this index. This is inside Twitter, right? I'm talking about the Twindle CLI index.
Oh.
The Twindle CLI folder index. Where is that file? I thought I made that change. Maybe I made it today.
Okay, then let us see. So you merged it into.
Yeah. No, I don't see it here.
You
if you can go to that file directly, yeah.
Yeah,
I did only one push, so it must be there inside that. But if you can go to that file directly, I'll show you where I put that change. So if you should use Puppeteer, you can see that the get tweet IDs is from the Puppeteer code, where they basically just scrape it and get the tweet IDs. Then this is where I made that change. So basically, I'm calling this function.
Okay. So this at the time that you were writing this, Puppeteer did not give the IDs, or?
Yeah, at the time I wrote the code, it wasn't doing it. But I still integrated this part, or maybe Puru did it. I'm not sure. So basically, this function is being called. The function that I wrote is being called here. So this is the other change that we need to make.
Okay, got it.
That's about it. So this is these 3 files.
Okay.
So now, how do we put it in the new format?
That is a very good question. Okay, so coming to our format, so at least to start off, maybe I'll just walk you through quickly through the code. In the API section, we have everything related to the API. Anyone who is importing from the API will get these 2 methods. One is from the tweet endpoint and one is from the search endpoint.
Cool.
So that content is here. So in our case, it would be the tweets endpoint that we want to look at. At least in this case, we have restricted it to like get one tweet only. I think we will need to make a modification in the URL, right? That is what you were saying.
Yeah. We could still leverage the same thing, because the same endpoint can be used for this array process also.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So then
we don't need a separate
would
file. We just use this.
Yeah, since it is part of the same endpoint, we could like maybe add a function which will enable us to pass in the extra field or the tweet array data, right?
Yeah.
Something along those lines, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So then what we would get is, along with all the other exports, you would get another one, like maybe get what would I call it? Get
array by IDs. I don't know. I mean, we're going to get a bunch of arrays. I mean, bunch of tweets, and we're going to pass multiple IDs as well. So get tweet array by IDs would make sense.
Yes, that sounds like a good name. Even though it is a big name, it clearly clarifies what we're trying to do. Yeah. So that is a good name. So I think you might need to just change this code here so that you're able to add that. Okay. From there, so we have the API section ready. And when you're talking about the index file, I don't think I might have your change. I don't have your change. So here, the change that you mentioned right now, where we would need to wait for the tweets, or at least these would be the list of tweet IDs, right? Should be a bigger if with the list of tweet IDs. I think just like the code you wrote here. This one.
Yeah.
And yes, get tweets from tweet array. So this would be what is exposed from the Twitter side, right? Module side.
Yes.
Okay. So then in our Twitter module, we would have
index.
So here in an index. So index, it is just exporting that Twitter section. That is the next file. So here, I suppose that you could add that function, right?
Yeah, that's what I was planning on doing.
Okay. Then there is the question of how do we tackle. Okay, let's do one thing. You can. This is a big function. I really do not like how it is laid out right now, even though I wrote it. Maybe just to avoid the confusion, we can have separate function here. Okay. So in that function, what you would do is you can require the new code that we wrote, this the API lookup, and from that you'll get the response directly. And then you would need to include this process response, which is doing process tweet array response. So essentially, this part is already handled by the API side. It is all abstracted away. So essentially, this process response would become whatever you're doing here.
Yes.
and all your imports I think would have moved. So you just need to figure out where in the code it is. So for
Where
example,
in the
render
code it
rich
is. Yeah.
tweets,
Render
you
rich
can
tweets, I need to figure out where it
search
is.
for it. Okay. So you can just do a control F, and I mean this one on the sidebar, it will search all the folders. If you want to restrict by a certain folder, you can just add a folder like Twitter, Twitter CLI/Twitter. And then here, if we look at the code, it is in this file called rich rendering,
Okay.
which is in transformations. So it makes sense. Transformation, rich rendering.
Okay.
And I think your transformation file would also, I mean, for function would also come under the tweet endpoint transformation file.
Yeah, because we are only going to do the same endpoint. Yeah.
Yeah. So from there internally, at least you were doing some helper functions like this, right? Add common, add tweet.
Mm.
So instead of that, what we would have is we would have a local kind of a structure, and to that structure we would be adding all the data, for example common and data. So you can see essentially whatever functions you had done there, it is essentially adding to this particular local variable.
Okay.
And once the function is done, it will just return that local variable.
So right now, wouldn't it be duplication of logic? Because now you originally have only one function, but pretty much I need to do the same thing for the array.
Oh, this is the same thing for the first tweet,
Yeah.
or for both. Both meaning the all the is this essentially the data, the processing that is happening?
Yeah, this is pretty much, see, for the
Okay.
tweet lookup, we were only doing it for one tweet. Now we'll be doing it for the first tweet. So I figure out the first tweet and I do pretty much the same thing.
Okay, got it.
See,
Okay.
I need to filter out the first tweet, definitely, because the reason I had to do that was because the first tweet does not have any reply to it, because it's the first tweet. So in the filtering process, I cannot tackle the first tweet along with the other replies. So that's why I have separated that logic out. So pretty much I need to do the same thing. So the same structure is there for Puppeteer also. So instead of doing two endpoints, I'm doing one endpoint, but I'm doing pretty much the same processing. So the first processing, I need to figure out the first tweet separately, process it, and then process the rest of the data.
Okay, got it. So this function definitely you can reuse.
Yeah.
For the first tweet.
So yeah, that is the part I need to figure out, because there's going to be a lot of, I can't write a separate function, I think, because I'm doing pretty much the same thing.
Okay, then that sounds good. So
okay.
That tackles all of this, or just the first part of it?
Just the first part of it. I think that will be what I need to do there.
And then the second part, I think you were saying that it is similar to the search endpoint. I think we have something here, search endpoint.
Yeah. It's
is it exactly the same?
It's similar to this, except I had to do one more filter. Like I had to put one more filter there, where like the response JSON I'm getting also has the first tweet.
Okay, great.
Okay, so this the first tweet, however, does not have this tweet dot reference tweets.
Okay.
So because that there is no reply to it, right? So it does not have that part. So I had to add that extra filter to process the other tweets, because then otherwise I was getting an error saying reference tweets is undefined on the first tweet.
Got it. So
that was the only change. Otherwise, the same logic.
Okay, so then what I understand is that you would you would run the API call, then you would filter and get the first tweet, and you would run this from the tweet endpoint. Then you would remove the first tweet and then run the same search endpoint
I need
processing.
to do that. So my code here is a little messy. So I need to remove the first tweet from the response and then do the same thing, search response logic that I did previously.
Okay, so essentially you are able to reuse both these functions.
Yeah, it's just that I need to figure out if there is any small minor issue here and there.
Yeah. So I think
cool.
I think that makes things much easier for you also. As long as you're not touching this one, we can figure out if we can merge the two later or not.
Okay.
So you might need to take a look at how this is arranged, and how this is essentially that common thing that you were having which you used.
Yeah.
So this is creating that sample structure, and then from each section it is like getting some data, and then from there, so for example here, okay, better. Okay, here is the first. So I'm just talking about the existing code, okay, not the Puppeteer part. So getting the first tweet, if there is an error, it does something. This part I just put in here just in case there's an error, but at least from there it is doing some validation processing. If, and what this does is it returns something. So it is not affecting the existing like global variable or anything. It is returning some data. If you look at the code for this, so this is one second. This is validation
process.
Yeah. So what it does is it checks a lot of things and then returns a kind of a status and an error. So if the tweet is deleted, it returns
than the error that Puru wrote. Yeah, so this is good because now we have a status attached.
Yeah. So it is just abstracting away. I think I wrote an error module here. So in the error, if I look at the validation, it is just saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Essentially the same code only. It just put into a different section.
Yeah.
So that we have it all.
Yeah.
So this is not throwing the error, it is returning the error.
Yeah.
That is the difference. So here we are getting that either it's a status as an error. I'll come back to this. Okay. If nothing is wrong, it will return status okay.
Okay.
Otherwise, status will be error. And if it is an error, then we can figure out, okay, here if it is tweet older than 7 days, then we can call the Puppeteer part, right?
Yeah.
So here I'm checking the error.
So
and
then
if it,
in the original index file, that Puppeteer thing should go away, right? Because
we can, yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
That will not need to know about Puppeteer at all.
Yeah. So then the process that I'm going to write will not be invoked from outside at all.
No, it will not be from outside because it will come into this scraping folder.
Yeah, into this folder.
Twitter,
so
rather than here.
Yeah. So this whole get tweets from tweet array from IDs, that whole function will only be called from within this logic flow that you're talking about. So if it's older than 7 days, then do it, right?
Yes, actually you should just continue with this function only. But if it is overwhelming for you, you can create a new function just for getting it out there. Then we can do one more refactor and then put it back in there.
Okay.
Right. So at least you can call it at will right now using the other flag, so that you can test your code. So essentially, this is like checking the error. If it is not the first tweet, then we are getting the conversation ID and then requesting that again. So it is like replacing the existing data. So that is the one you were also confused about how we can do it, right?
Yeah, because this await thing, I didn't know it can return a response. Okay, now this makes more sense.
So then from there, we have the first tweet, and then we are doing what is this processing? Transformation. So from the transformation, we are putting it back into this first structure.
Man, this code looks so concise, but it's actually doing lots of things.
Yeah, I mean,
I know. I mean, I know you're still following my flow, but now that you have written it in a different format, it looks a little overwhelming.
Yeah, I understand, but it is a bit overwhelming for me also, looking at this entire, like a lot of code is here. So maybe once we also read it a few times, we'll get more familiar with it. But yeah, for me also, I want to figure out if we can split this up also, so that it's like the
only confusion I have little bit now is that structure that you have written. So if I'm going to write a separate function for getting the array, the tweet array, then should I copy the structure over? Because then it'll again lead to duplication, right? Because
it will actually. So I think hello. Yeah, just for you to get started and do the stuff, I think you can just make a copy of this function and give it a name for yourself, and then you can play around with it so that we have an example of how this works. Then we can eventually integrate it back into this.
Yeah, then we'll refactor it. Yes. The other thing that I wanted to ask you was, oh my God, Yeah, how do I do this? Like, for example, do you have GitHub desktop?
I do not have GitHub desktop.
Okay. So
What is your
see, I'm
concern?
using GitHub. I'm using GitHub desktop, and normally what I do is I create a separate branch on that, and then I
Okay.
start I start making changes. So then those changes will be reflected in the GitHub desktop. Then I'll commit the changes, push it, and then create a pull request. This is my normal flow. So
Yeah.
now, because the main branch is different from the your branch, I don't know how to create a new branch and then get your code there. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Because right now I see
Yes.
your branch, and I'm able to start working directly on your branch. Is that okay? Because that's something a little
Got it.
confusing for me. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. You can check out this branch, Twitter module refactor, and
Okay.
you can either work on it directly, or you can create another branch from that. So when you're sitting on Twitter module refactor, if you create a new branch, it will be taking from that.
Oh, okay. Okay. Because I thought if I create a new branch, again it'll go to the main branch. So I was a little confused. Okay. So if I create a new branch from your branch, then it'll create it'll
Sub
have that
branch
new
only.
code, right? Okay.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Because I was a little confused by that too. Because then I didn't want to make changes on your branch directly. I thought if something goes wrong, then it'll be a problem.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Actually, it is coming to your fork, so it is okay. And also, Mira, I think the meeting will end soon. I think our 40-minute time is almost up.
Is up. Okay. Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
I'll take a stab at this. I think it'll take the whole day tomorrow for me.
Sure.
So
Sure.
I'll keep you guys posted. Okay.
Sure. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank
Mira.
you, Kenny. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you, Mira. Bye bye.
Take
Have a
care.
good night.
Bye. Good night.